Hello, and welcome to the East Hollywood News Beacon, Collegian Wired News Magazine. From LA City College Journalism, I am your host, Martin Renteria. We begin with the story of a woman and her daughter. They travel 3,000 miles to escape gang violence in El Salvador. But on their way to California, they are forced to remain in Mexico. LACC reporter John Johns has that story.
Remain in Mexico by John A. Johns. Diana Ortiz's phone vibrated. She badly needed to talk to her husband Salvador, who lived in New Jersey. Instead, an unfamiliar number popped up. It made her anxious. Diana read the text. "Pay your rent in the next 48 hours or we will kill your little girl. And she will suffer and suffer and suffer." Ortiz froze. As a street vendor, Diana was visible and unprotected. Every day for weeks, local gangs demanded rent from her. Rent is extortion that small business owners in Central America are terrorized into paying. The police in El Salvador are full partners with the gangs. With zero options, Diana faced a choiceless choice. Her choice? To migrate to the north with 12-year-old Josefina. Mother and daughter fled their hometown of Santa Ana, El Salvador on March 1st, 2020. Diana paid an installment of $4,000 to smugglers so the pair could make it through Mexico to the U.S. border. Overwhelmed with sadness at leaving family, fearful of what lay ahead, but also hopeful as they departed El Salvador, the first leg to southern Mexico was uneventful. Upon arrival in San Cristobal de las Casas, a remote town on the Guatemala-Mexico border, a Mexican drug cartel took over the operation, locking them in a guarded house for 3 days. Just before departure, Diana and Josefina's traffickers gave them 4 apples, water, and pills to control nausea on the trip. The pair were crammed into a semi-trailer with 215 other men, women, and children, and given strict instructions to stay silent and to contain themselves. Hauled in worse conditions and cattle transported to a slaughterhouse, mother and daughter stood for 26 hours straight, while armed men in trucks followed them. Despite near suffocating conditions, Diana and Josefina remained strong. Arriving just outside Mexico City, the traffickers then transferred the cargo to a bus. 36 hours later, they pulled into a cartel safe house in Altair, Sonora, about 50 miles from the border crossing into Arizona. Forced to live there until Diana's husband could send the final payment of $2,000, the two women slept for days on mattresses blanketed with lice in a shack covered in filth and surrounded by violent criminals. As fast as he could, Salvador scraped up enough money to free his wife and daughter. Early one evening, the cartel took Diana, Josefina, and 12 other women and children to a fortified military camp. Diana and Josefina were told to ride in the cab of the truck, separating them from the rest of the group. Josefina was the oldest child. "My worst fear was that they would do something to my daughter because she was now a teenager and very pretty," Diana said. "So I prayed that no one would look at her. I wasn't going to allow her to be separated from me, ever." From Altair, the group drove to a location in the hills outside Sasabe, Sonora, an isolated, dusty, tiny border town across from Arizona. It was 11 p.m. on March 19th, 2020. The cartel told them it was a 5-minute walk to a place where they could cross, and the Border Patrol would be helpful to them. Compounding their treachery, just before departing, the cartel robbed them of their money, backpacks, and jackets. The Sonora Desert freezes at night in March, and tonight was no different. Terrified, lost, and sad, the small group of 14 women and children walked single file for an hour and a half before finding an opening in Donald Trump's big, beautiful wall. Far from the U.S. port of entry, the lost group straggled along the hilly dirt road north of the wall until Border Patrol agents picked them up. It was 1 o'clock in the morning. The weary travelers believed that they would be welcomed by the United States. They were wrong. Instead, the agents herded them into a pickup truck originally built to hold dogs. Arriving 1 hour after Title 42 shut the border to non-essential travel, Border Patrol agents immediately chose to deport the women and children, but not before taking their shoelaces and a second layer of clothing. At 3 a.m., the Border Patrol dumped Diana and Josefina back in Sasabe, Sonora. Exhausted, dehydrated, and famished, sunrise would bring a new challenge: surviving the cartel.
Fentanyl has become an American epidemic, and it became personal to LACC reporter Matthew Rodriguez. As we learn in Fentanyl Unmasked. Experts say one pill can kill.
When you consider that the amount of fentanyl that could kill us, is on the tip of a fingertip.
I'm getting so tired of being tired, and I am so tired of my tiredness making me sad. I'm overly emotional, and I'm pretty sure it's just because I'm tired.
Meet Mila. She was called a miracle baby when she was born. At the time, her mother was paralyzed on the entire left side of her body. She was in an accident 3 years earlier. Mila survived. Charlie and Matthew are her brothers. The family lives in the Central Valley, in the foothills of the Sequoia Nevada mountains. The sun rises over the peaks at dawn. It illuminates railroad tracks that crisscross groves of oranges and walnuts, vegetable patches and dairy spread across California's Central Valley. Matthew says Mila grew up to be whip smart. He says she became a young woman who was easy to laugh with and to befriend. She attended a university prep charter school, and Mila dreamed of attending medical school. But beneath the surface, her brother says there was deep anguish. A doctor prescribed Xanax, a fast-acting tranquilizer to control anxiety when she was a senior in high school. It is meant to help with panic disorders too. She got a job at a local diner and put off college for a year. Her brother says she made friends with her coworkers. Text messages, diary entries, and social media posts provide fragmented memories. They are the bits and pieces of Mila's story.
I fell asleep for a little bit, but then I woke up and then I started crying because I remembered that it's still a kitty day.
Mila has not slept in 3 days. She felt ill and manic for several hours. She has dyed her eyebrows a deep shade of emerald green. The latest regimen of antidepressants for bipolar disorder are not stabilizing her mood. They are making things worse. Fentanyl has two faces. It has been used in surgery since the 1960s. Nasal spray and pill form followed. But by the 1990s, a fentanyl pain patch was developed to treat chronic pain. It was used to treat the pain of cancer patients. Fentanyl has now become Main Street. It is used to cut heroin, cocaine, and other drugs. It is developed in underground laboratories. It also comes from China, where there are 5,000 pharmaceutical manufacturers according to the Brookings Institution, a Washington, D.C. think tank. But relations between the two countries are tense. Brookings maintains that Beijing is not so willing to cooperate with Washington on counter-narcotics. China now diverts a large percentage of fentanyl through a different route. Mexican drug cartels smuggle fentanyl from China into the United States, according to the study by Brookings. Adding fentanyl to heroin, cocaine, or counterfeit pills makes them stronger. It increases the chances for addiction. Users do not always know their tolerance for opioids. Experts say one pill can kill.
I was tracking fentanyl deaths, hearing about it across the United States and seeing evidence of it in our seizure. I hear all the time people ask me, why are they doing this? Aren't they killing their customers? And my response to that is they're making a lot of money, and there's something called inelastic demand, if you've ever studied economics, where regardless of what the cost of the product is, or in this case, the danger of the product, there is a market for it, a steady market. There's a market that's going to buy it regardless. And that's the tragedy of it all.
Just trying is like hard. Like, my entire life is the reason why I want to go. And it doesn't have to do with any guy.
Myla's anxiety got worse. She was emotionally insecure, according to her brother Matthew. It showed in relationships with boys. He says she always ended up with a broken heart. Her condition got worse during one relationship. Her brother says he saw telltale signs of financial and emotional abuse. There was a DUI. Then she became pregnant, and she miscarried. Her boyfriend broke up with her after she lost the baby. She was laid off from work in the middle of the pandemic. She was stuck at home, and she had to pay expensive fines for her DUI. Myla's brother Charlie is the one who discovered her in the family's home. She died on her bedroom floor on April 13th, 2021. The coroner's report lists the cause of death as fentanyl-related. Overdose deaths have gone up over the last 20 years, according to the Center for Disease Control. It began with overdoses from opioid painkillers in the 1990s. Then heroin caused the most deaths. And now it is fentanyl. Experts say it is an epidemic.
Company on the tag 1360. Was that engine 89 or light force 89?
Matthew is here. I'll give you guys the floor.
Awesome, thank you. Hi, Emily. Thank you so much for joining me today. Okay, I'm with Dr. Emily Einstein from the National Institute on Drug Abuse. One thing I really wanted to ask what are some of the complexities of substance abuse disorders and mental illness? Like, how do they inform each other or exacerbate one another? Or does one cause one or the other? Can you give us any idea of that?
So these can be both biological and social or environmental. And it depends on the individual person, which one might emerge before the other. So it's possible that sometimes people will start using substances as a way to self-treat symptoms of another psychiatric illness. It's also possible that substances are taken first and someone develops another psychiatric illness after they already have a substance use disorder.
You got an angle. Look at your angle. Strap pose.
Her brother Matthew says what he has learned about life and death could fill a book. The future feels stolen.
We work, my agency works with a lot of agencies in foreign countries. Mexico is tough. It's really tough to kind of get traction there and feel comfortable working on those kinds of issues there. I mean, look, these are cruel, ruthless organizations, multi-billion-dollar organizations, and it's very difficult.
It's the cartel for a reason. They're pretty ruthless.
Right.
But has there any attention being paid on the users and discouraging people from opioids across the board? I mean, I do know that people are catching on now, especially the more that people overdose and the more people know that any drug can be mixed with fentanyl, I think it's starting to catch on to people around the street that they're just like, all right, something's not right, you know?
I hope. I mean, I can only look at overdose rates, which are horrifying.
Tool that is available right now are fentanyl test strips. So these are used if people dissolve some of their drug supply in water, they can test them with fentanyl test strips to determine if fentanyl is present. I would say that it seems like most of the illicit drugs on the market now are at least at risk of fentanyl contamination. And some examples of occurrences in which this is most dangerous are for people who don't take opioids normally, but take something like cocaine or methamphetamine. So both of those have been increasingly contaminated with fentanyl. So a person might not have tolerance to opioids and then is exposed to this very potent opioid, which increases overdose risk. And then another novel threat are counterfeit pills that are pressed to look like pharmaceuticals that are legally available, but these are illegal versions that contain fentanyl and can increase risk of overdose as well. Another novel approach that has been used in Europe and Australia and Canada for quite some time are overdose prevention centers. So you may have seen that New York opened the first 2 that were legally sanctioned in the United States, and Rhode Island recently passed legislation to allow for a pilot program of these centers in Rhode Island. And the idea there is that people would bring their own drugs to the overdose prevention center, where they would use them under supervision of medical personnel who would be able to reverse an overdose should one occur.
Oh, I'm not trying to get wet. This is what I fucking get. Okay, now let's go, let's go.
He tells Mila's story not for pity. He wants people to look for behavior that mirrored his sister's. He wants that to happen before their lives are also changed. For Collegian Wired, this is Martin Renteria reporting. Next, imagine your world goes dark. Your eyesight is gone. LACC reporter Sorina Zakax explores the world of 2 disabled students to learn about the obstacles they found at LA City College. Close your eyes and imagine.
Look at the world around you, the colors and the sights. Now imagine losing your sight tomorrow. Something like that happened to Roy Payan and to Portia Mason before they enrolled in classes at Los Angeles City College.
It was a gradual loss for me, little by little. I know that when I was growing up, I wore glasses for a very short time. I had to wear them in order to read and to get around most times, but at the same time, there were things that I wanted to do that I wasn't unable to do given my limited vision.
One of the scary episodes of losing your vision is after I lost my sight, I had to pretty much get rid of all the glass in my house because I kept dropping glasses and plates and breaking them. So I converted it all to to plastics because they won't break on me. When you lose your sight, you're constantly dropping stuff. So
This disability calls for accommodations. That just means assistance to function in the world and at a public school. The first day can be a challenge.
For me, for just having not gone to school for a while, it was like just having to start all over again. Like just being a new student in college and having to learn all the ropes again.
obviously not being familiar with the campus, I had to keep asking everyone, where's this class, where's that class, and so they would direct me. And when I got into class, again, I had to have somebody direct me as to where I could sit and stuff. And so, like anything else, you know, I was embarrassed because I have to keep asking everybody where I can sit and stuff. And, they're all looking at me like, hey, who invited the blind old guy? And my first class that I attended, the professor took a look at me and he said, "Are you blind?" I said, "Yes." He said, I can't take you. And I said, "Why not?" He said, "Because you're blind and you're going to slow the class down too much."
Actually, federal law protects students with disabilities. The Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, prohibits discrimination based on a disability.
Let us in. That's all I'm asking the educational institutions. Let us in. Accept us. Do what you have to do to accommodate us, because we have as much right to an education as anyone else. Give us the tools that we need to become independent.
Portia wants to make sure that course material, like handouts and pictures or maps, are accessible to students who are blind or visually impaired.
But a lot of times the lecture material was on a PowerPoint, and even then they were not easy for me to read, since a lot of it was graphics and they needed to be converted to a text format, since I'm using a screen reading software to read it.
Roy and Portia are plaintiffs in a lawsuit they hope will change the way educators treat disabled students. The lawsuit was filed against the Los Angeles Community College District in 2017.
When you begin to advocate for yourself and you make those changes to whatever has to be changed, you not only help yourself, but you help all those other kids behind you who are too scared or too intimidated to say anything. That's what you have to learn. You have to learn how to advocate for yourself. You have to learn how to say, this is not right, fix it. Because when you don't, they'll continue to do the things that they do.
The case has not been settled. But in February 2021, Judge Consuelo Maria Callahan of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals put pressure on the district.
And I know that you get money for students with disabilities. It seems that the district seems to take some sort of position that they don't really have to do anything until someone comes in and complains. And I'm pretty sure that the government expects a little more out of you than that. You can't say something costs too much if it's required by the law, because what happens then is they take all your money.
Los Angeles Community College District intended to send a lawsuit to the Supreme Court, but in March 2022, the parties agreed to a new round of negotiations. In the state capitol in Sacramento, lawmakers see themselves as being at the forefront of crafting and supporting rights for the disabled. Early in 2022, the Lieutenant Governor, Eleni Kounalakis, weighed in on the issue in a letter to the district. The Collegian obtained a copy of the letter, which reads in part that California has great traditions for civil rights and inclusion for everyone, including people with disabilities. For more than 7 years, the concerns at a public school remain the same for students like Roy and Portia. The barriers to an accessible education are still in place for blind students. Look at the world around you, the colors and the sights. Now imagine losing your eyesight. For Collegian Wired, this is Sorina Sokach reporting.
And finally, photojournalist Lewis White shines a light on stereotypes about South Central Los Angeles. He examines ethnicity, geography, and culture as he breaks the racial monolith.
So what comes to mind when you think of South Central Los Angeles? Anime nerds, avid gamers, software coders, medical professionals, investment bankers, professors, stay-at-home dads, artists, musicians, dancers, teachers, surfers, actors, entrepreneurs, students, athletes, student athletes. Or is it gang violence, police chases, riots, looters, social unrest, lowriders, scary alleyways and graffiti-covered walls, drive-by shootings? Is it lasting imagery from 90s classic genre cinema like the Hughes Brothers' Menace to Society or John Singleton's Boys in the Hood? What do you picture? South Central Los Angeles is not just an invisible part of the city that some avoid at all costs. It is not just a place surrounded by stigma created by outsiders and some insiders. Historic South Central Los Angeles is a 2.55 square miles region that looks a lot like a piece of a puzzle. The area is flanked to the north by downtown Los Angeles, as Washington Boulevard marks the invisible limit between the two, and by Vernon Avenue to the south, the Harbor Freeway, the 110, to the west, and historic Central Avenue to the east. The historic core, South Central Los Angeles, was the West Coast jazz mecca once upon a time. Central Avenue's famous Dunbar Hotel still stands. Unfortunately, Dolphin's record store is sadly no more. Both were integral to the West Coast jazz scene. Central Avenue was also home to the L.A. chapter of the Black Panther Party, as depicted on this mural. What is the difference? These areas, shaped by race-based property covenants, redlining. Once these covenants were made unenforceable, not illegal, a change took place. What is known as white flight occurred. African Americans began to move westward, which is past Figueroa Street or the Harbor Freeway. Most white families moved away.
My name is Travis Lacey. I reside in South L.A. I lived in South L.A. 16 years now, going on 17 years. What I've experienced since I've been in LA in terms of what the people are like, friendly, great neighbors. On the street I live on, the neighbors are a little older or a bit older than I am. So they sort of hold on to friendly neighbor kind of values. And I experienced that once I moved here. So right away I became friends with my next door neighbor who in their 80s and 90s now.
What color is your lowrider?
Unfortunately, I don't have a lowrider.
Linda Guzman. I've lived here where I'm at for 26 years, but I lived on 54th Street for 9 years before I moved here.
Okay.
And before then, I lived in South Central LA on Bering Cross. So yeah, I've been there a while.
Okay. Overall, if I'm going to be that person asking you, what would you say? If someone said, how do you like South Los Angeles?
It's my home. It's my adopted home. And I like it. I don't like some of the things that happen, but it's in every community. So I've been here for 26 years and we haven't had any problems here. I like it.
My name is Dorothea Whitebrake. I am a store manager, and I'm the mom of 3 wonderful children, 2 adults and 1 senior in high school. I am also a student in college, and I have a small business that I've been running for more than 10 years now.
How would you describe where you live?
I describe where I live as a residential neighborhood that also has some large apartment complexes, and I do live in one of them. There's a lot of homeowners around here, and there's a lot of homes that are owned by people that don't live in the community, and they rent those out. I live where a lot of people work here, and a lot of children around who attend the local schools. And then we have a lot of young people who seem to be a little bit, just kind of loiter and do things like donuts in their cars and make a lot of noise, street racing and that type of thing.
What would be your greatest hope for South Los Angeles?
Wow, that's a big one. My greatest hope for South Los Angeles is that we could have a completely different way of life when it comes to the aspect of violence in our community.
What's your name?
Christian Break.
How old are you?
I am 16.
Okay. And so that means you're in high school?
Yes.
All right. And tell me about some of your favorite things. What's 2 of your favorite things?
Anime and skateboarding.
Okay. And what do you like about skateboarding?
Well, I like that it gets me around faster, and I found a new thing that I like to do.
Okay. Are you learning tricks or you like to cruise?
More of a cruiser.
Okay. When you're outside or coming home from school, do you ever see the police?
Yes.
And do you have any feelings when you see the police?
When I do admit I do get a little nervous when I see them. Because it's just like, I know about what happens on the news, like with Black Lives Matter and them harassing Black people. So when I see it, I do get a little nervous that I could possibly be approached.
But have you ever have the police ever said anything to you? Have you ever had any issues from that?
No, I've never had any issues, but they have waved at me like in a friendly way, but never anything negative.
Most folks in South Los Angeles lead a crime-free existence. African Americans have traditionally been the image of who lives in both historic South Central Los Angeles as well as cultural South Los Angeles. Yet, they make up only a mere 10.1% of the population of the historic core of South Central L.A. That 2.55 square, remember that map that looks like a piece of a puzzle? Well, this is according to the 2000 U.S. Census. Latinos are at the top with 87.2% of the population. I encountered a humble stranger crushing cans to recycle on 51st Street. Our conversation was revealing.
man will never be able to fly like a bird.
Right? That's a beautiful freedom,
Yeah,
isn't it?
that's the freedom, just make, man. Woo.
James, what's the medal?
Weldon.
Johnson.
You
Okay.
heard of him?
No.
He wrote the Negro National Anthem.
Lift the voice to sing. Okay.
He also wrote Creation.
Okay.
Look it up on YouTube.
I will.
Creation, man, that's he was a great. My mother was a poet.
Oh, okay.
She loved his writing. She named me after him.
Okay.
I'm not great as he, probably never be great as he was, but I like that name.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
59.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think when he went to name, they passed that law against Wallace.
Yeah, Wallace, George
yeah,
Wallace.
Yeah, in the early 60s. I went back to Texas, man. It was nothing like, it was something just in me to boycott some lunch counters and stuff down there, you know?
Yeah.
Even though I could have been arrested or whatever, I just couldn't see myself not doing something.
Although racially restrictive covenants and discriminatory homeowners associations are now firmly in the past, socioeconomics is the dividing line. The line that segregates the quality of life, schools, safety, and services, where only a few blocks apart can still be a world of difference. While in Exposition Park near USC, I meet with two young men. We discuss fatherhood.
What's going on? My name is Ricky, and this is baby This is my son. He's 2 years old.
How's it going? I'm Shayla Fletcher. This is Sophia Fletcher. She's 1.5.
So tell me about a little bit about fatherhood. We'll just start right there.
A little bit about fatherhood. From the very short time that I've been a father, I've learned that it's gonna continue to get tough, but consistency is key because this guy is all that matters. Honestly.
Like the love that you have for your kid is so overwhelming that it's like I don't get how you disappear. You know?
Yeah.
African Americans are the predominant group in one area of all of Los Angeles. The Crenshaw, Baldwin Hills, Leimert Park, Windsor Hills, Ladera Heights, and View Park neighborhoods. Collectively, the most affluent African American neighborhoods on the West Coast.
That's our time for now. Collegian Wired News Magazine is a production of LA City College Journalism with support from California Humanities. Thank you for watching East Hollywood Beacon. Goodbye for now.